Number 10. KRISTOFF and KADIRA Von Doom. KRISTOFF and KADIRA Von Doom are the children of Storm and Dr. Doom. They come from the novel series X-Men: The Chaos Engine, which is actually a trilogy wherein we explore what would happen if 3 great villains took control of the Marvel Universe, creating their own version of a perfect world using the Cosmic Cube. It starts off with Doom's variation on this world. In this reality, Dr. Doom has made Storm his wife, and she rules by his side as his Empress. The union of these powerful characters produces 2 children, KRISTOFF and KADIRA. We can assume, of course, being the children of both Doom and Storm, that they would be physically, mentally, and demonstrably powerful when it came to their abilities, especially being raised by these 2 powerhouses. Also, if I wasn't clear about this is an alternate reality, so if you're like, when did this happen? It is not main continuity. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more children of the X-Men, they have a lot of kids if we, surf through the multiverse, so we could do it for you. If you want that part 3, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 9. Nocturne. Nocturne is the daughter of Nightcrawler and Scarlet Witch. Obviously, not from the main continuity. In fact, Talia Wagner is known for being a part of a multiversal hero team, the Exiles. Nocturne is from the alternate reality of Earth 2182. In fact, back on her home reality, which first appeared in Millennial Visions, Talia is also known as a member of the X-Men team, fighting alongside her father, Nightcrawler, who is actually their field leader. She is a low-level telepath with incredible superhuman agility skills, the ability to wall crawl, and the ability to fire powerful brimstone hex energy bolts, something inherited from both her father and her mother. Nocturne's physical appearance is also similar to her father's, a bit demonic looking, and of course, blue. All my blue X-Men. Top 10 blue X-Men. Actually, I feel like there's a lot of X-Men that are blue. Or mutants that are blue, maybe? There's a lot of blue mutants for sure. I don't know about X-Men team members. Number 8. Jimmy Hudson. Jimmy Hudson is the son of Wolverine from the ultimate reality of Earth 1610. His powers are similar to his father's, but in this reality they're believed to work a little bit differently. As opposed to just being insane healing powers, Jimmy's power set in this universe as a mutant is believed to be based more in survival. So these powers aren't necessarily just about healing, but survival instincts and capability, meaning that Jimmy is just much better at surviving and evolving to survive than anyone else alive on the planet. And I mean that because in this reality, Wolverine eventually dies, so really Jimmy is the only one left alive who's really good at surviving. Jimmy Hudson has also been bonded to a poison before and gained control of his poison, which are basically alien-like beings resembling symbiotes in look and abilities, but ultimately a different alien race themselves, called poisons. So yeah. Jimmy is the son of Wolverine and Magneto's wife, Magda Lencher, although Wolverine urges him through a letter when the truth of his connection to Jimmy is revealed that he actually shouldn't focus too much on, who his biological parents are. Jimmy was raised by adoptive parents. His dad actually served with Logan in the war and agreed to look after Jimmy in his father's place, even giving the young boy his own family name. Hudson. Number 7. Esme. Esme is one of the main Stepford cuckoos. Well, I mean, I guess they're all pretty main, but you know what I mean. She's probably one of the most well-known if we're talking offhand about how many of the cuckoos you can name. Esme and the other cuckoos are basically like the children of Emma Frost, although as I've said before, not children that she had consensually. And I didn't say that before in this list, but if you've heard me talk about the Stepford cuckoos and their relation to Emma, yeah. Instead, these were lab babies basically made from Emma's eggs that were stolen from Emma while she was in a comatose state. Esme, like the other cuckoos, is kind of like a genetic clone as well as a child of Emma's, and Emma actually does consider the cuckoos to be like her daughters. She treats them as though they were her own flesh and blood, and often her own responsibility, kinda stepping in to like play mom sometimes, although she does give them freedom to make their own mistakes. I guess what I mean is Emma isn't known for being like a controlling kind of parent. She's like, I'm here when you need me, otherwise you do you. More recently in the comics, Esme, known for her diamond form and powerful telepathic abilities, teamed up and primarily dated young Cable. Well, technically all the cuckoos were dating him at one point, though I would say Esme was basically the main squeeze of young Cable, and the sister that he was most taken by while he was dating all of them. And if you're like, whoa, how did that happen? The Stepford cuckoos, they share things because they're kind of like a hive mind. So they're like, we'll just all date this person. It's cool. Also Krakoa. Everyone's dating everyone. Number 6. Akihiro. Akihiro is the son of Wolverine and his wife Itsu. Unfortunately, before Akihiro was even born, his life took a turn for the worse. Along with inheriting his father's powers, I think he also inherited some of his tragic luck. Wolverine has the worst luck, I think. His mother, Itsu, was killed before she could give birth to him, assassinated. The child was believed dead, but in reality he had been cut from her womb and possibly, due to his inherited healing powers, miraculously survived. Although, that's not clear, because usually your powers don't manifest until puberty, but sometimes your powers manifest when you're in the womb. I mean, look at Professor X with Cassandra Nova. Apparently that's a thing that happened. Akihiro would grow up and become a pawn of the villain known as Romulus. For most of his life, he'd also be known as Daken, a cruel nickname given to him when he was a child, being raised by his adoptive parents. The nickname was given to him because of his mixed race appearance, being part American and part Japanese. Though to be clear, his parents weren't the ones that gave it to him. It was people around his parents. Akihiro's powers are similar to Wolverine's, though his bone claws are a little bit different in terms of placement and appearance. Like his father, Akihiro is also known for being a skilled fighter as well. The apple does not fall far from the tree when it comes to fighting abilities. Number 5. Xandra Naramani. Xandra is Professor X's daughter, who is created out of his genetic material and that of his lover's genetic material, the Shi'ar Magistrix Lilandra Naramani, after both of them were believed dead. As such, Xandra grew up to become Shi'ar royalty and also spent a good amount of her life hunted because of this, with various parties attempting to use her for their own means. Xandra is an extremely gifted telepath. She can manipulate others' minds, read minds, and can create hyper-realistic telepathic illusions. Number 4. Ruby Summers. She was the X-offspring used in our oh-so-clickable thumb for the part 1 to this list, and although she was on my extended list for that part 1, my long brainstorm that I came up with, I didn't get around to talking about her because I kind of reached a point where there were too many Summers children on that list, and I was like, I don't want to make this a top 10 children of Cyclops. We got that list, and also that's not what this list is. What can I say? Sykes got strong genes. That's why Mr. Sinister is so obsessed after all and is known as the #1 fan of the Summers Club. Scott Summers is Ruby's dad in the alternate reality she hails from, and Emma Frost is her mother. This makes Ruby fairly powerful, not at the level of Hope or X-Man, but still pretty impressive. She's also super cool looking, which is an added bonus. Ruby hails from the alternate Earth of 1191, the home reality of famous X-Men ally Bishop. Ruby is also capable of emitting optic blasts like her dad and his brothers, but she has more control over when and how she emits these blasts, unlike her dad who's like, I literally need a visor. Ruby also comes with her Ruby form, which like her mother's Diamond form, grants her invulnerability and pretty much immortality. Number 3. Olivier Raven. Olivier Raven is legally known as Olivier LeBeau and is one of the alternate reality children of Gambit and Rogue. Honestly, I feel like there are not enough of these kids out in the multiverse. I don't know if that's just me. For a couple as famous as Gambit and Rogue, I mean, you would think that we'd have a lot more kids from them, at least through the multiverse. Though admittedly, I'm not quite sure that Rogue and Gambit are really the kid having type, at least from what I've seen in the main continuity. They seem pretty content with just having their fur babies right now. So maybe they just aren't super into having kids as a family. Olivier hails from the reality of Earth 41001, the reality of Gen Next, a group Ollie is part of. He has powers similar to his mother's, except he has better control over them and is able to choose when and how much power, life energy, and memories he absorbs via physical contact, or doesn't absorb in cases where he just, wants to make physical contact without using his powers. He can also absorb powers on a more permanent level, although he has less control it seems over when this happens. Like his father, he also seems to have some charm-based powers. Either that, or he's just charming. Number 2. Proteus. Proteus is the son of Moira McTaggart, who before I would count more as like an ex-ally, but with recent revelations we can definitely consider her a member in the same way we might consider someone like Charles Xavier. It turns out that Moira herself was a mutant this whole time, possessing unique reincarnation powers. She has also been known for being a leader and teacher of X-Men groups before, including the time when she led a team that Professor X then recruited, sending them into Krakoa to rescue the original X-Men. Not Krakoa as we know it now, but Krakoa as it was back in the day when it was like a monster island. Proteus is Kevin McTaggart, son of Joseph and Moira McTaggart. He is currently one of the 5 on Krakoa, and his powers as part of that team are mainly used to warp reality, allowing the non-viable eggs that Egg, formerly known as Gold Balls, produces to become viable for life. These eggs are then used to grow new versions of fallen mutants. Proteus is an Omega level mutant who requires hosts to survive. Initially, Kevin had a body, but now he's basically just pure energy. The hosts he controls and feeds off of eventually are exhausted and killed by that energy drain, making him not just a powerful psionic mutant, but also a powerful energy vampire as well, unintentionally. Number 1. Legion. Legion is the son of Professor Charles Xavier that was conceived when he had a love affair with Gabrielle Haller, which is where Legion gets his legal last name, as his given name is David Haller. Legion is so powerful because he suffers from a severe dissociative identity disorder, where he has more than 100 personas residing within him. Each persona has a number, many of names, and they each have their own specific power set that show up whenever they take over. Because of this, there is almost nothing that Legion isn't capable of. He can manipulate matter and time. We've seen him time travel and completely warp reality as a result of his possible abilities. He also has some pretty powerful hair, which I gotta say, I'm happy that he still rocks even now in the current modern day comics. He's still got that sweet hair. So tall.
Number 10. Thunderbird. AKA John Proudstar, Thunderbird made his comic book debut in Giant Size X-Men issue 1, and during his childhood on the Apache Reservation in Camp Verde, Arizona, John wasn't like the other kids on the reservation. He grew up extremely strong and he became an athlete, and at just the age of 20 his mutant powers manifested when he wrestled a charging bison with his bare hands. That's a lot of strength. Now this earned him fame on the reservation, so much so that Charles Xavier caught wind of the young man through Cerebro and invited him to join the X-Men. The first mission John took was actually the rescue of the original X-Men from Krakoa. Xavier then gave him the nickname Thunderbird. Now Apocalypse experimented on Thunderbird and transformed him into the Horseman of War at one point. Now fortunately this didn't last forever, as he broke free of Apocalypse's mind control and began getting his life back together. You can find all this in Exiles issue 1. And before we go on to number 9, guys, if you haven't already, you can go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. It really does help our studio out a lot. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for supporting Top 10 Nerd. Now back to this list. Number 9. Wither. Making his first appearance in New Mutants Volume 2, Issue 3, Wither, aka Kevin Ford, grew up thinking he was cursed, or he was the most unlucky person on the planet. His mutant power started to manifest, and he noticed it first in his plants and then on his clothes. See, his plants would die and his clothes would start to fade away. They would start to decay, almost wither away. Now we get it. Now his father tried to calm him down once he realized this, but coming into contact with Kevin, well, you could have guessed what happens. He was soon discovered and was invited to join Xavier's Institute to learn how to control his wild powers of organic decay. He got close with Wallflower, aka Lori Collins, but in the House of M storyline, he touched her arm and crippled her. He ran away hurt and was soon met by Selene, the Black Queen, and she invited Wither to join her circle, and he gladly accepted. Number 8. Polaris. She's a powerful mutant who came to control magnetism, and she made her first appearance in X-Men 49 as Lorna Dane, but then in issue 97, she was Polaris. Cerebro identified her as a mutant when she stepped out of the shower and had green hair. So Iceman had a crush on her when she was part of the team, but she was in love with Havoc. Her powers are of course similar to Magneto's, but she lost them after the M-Day event as well. So when Apocalypse came into the picture, he also restored her powers, as she was deemed the Horseman Pestilence. She was saved by her lover man Havoc and was also healed of Apocalypse's mind control. So again, didn't last too long, but definitely did see enough dark days. Number 7. GLOB Herman. GLOB Herman, aka Robert Herman, made his debut in New X-Men issue 117, and he grew up with a father who despised mutants a lot. So already we're off to a promising start. So when GLOB mutated, his father was just not having it. So much so that his mother drove out GLOB to Westchester and left him for Professor X. See, this mutation was interesting. His skin was this transparent living wax, which he's able to maintain being on fire, which is kind of cool. He runs with the New Mutants now, but at one point he did join the Omega Gang, led by Kid Omega, and they made their own stand for mutant rights. See, GLOB wasn't a fan of the school, and he also had a grudge by the way that his father treated him. So he had a pretty harsh take on how to treat humans. Poor GLOB. I mean, he had a rough childhood, not exactly his fault here at all. Number 6. Kid Omega. Okay, that guy that I just mentioned, of course, I'll fill you in a little bit on him as well and what gang that he was a part of. Quintavious Quinton Quirinius made his first appearance in X-Men issue 134, and he has been described as one of the most powerful telepaths, one of the most strongest mutants ever besides Jean Grey. He was once the host of the Phoenix Force as well, so that should give you any indication. He was one of Xavier's Xavier's prized pupils until he put together the Omega Gang, which was a gang that takes out humans for the crimes they committed against mutants. He even went to a tattoo shop to get him and the gang tattoos of an Omega symbol to put over top of the X-Men symbol. So they weren't playing around here. I mean, at least try wash off tattoos first. I mean, give it some thought, you know, those things are forever. Number 5, Banshee. Making his first appearance in X-Men issue 28, Sean Cassidy was born as the heir to the castle and estate of Cassidy Keep in Ireland. Professor Xavier asked him to join the X-Men at the same time as Thunderbird, and they both stayed as members of the new X-Men. He went on to train the new generation of X-Men and Generation X, but was killed during Deadly Genesis when he tried to stop the Blackbird from crashing when it was taken over. Banshee remained one of the unliving until the Apocalypse twins resurrected him using the Death Seed, thus becoming the Horseman of Death himself. Later on, he ended up in the custody of the X-Men when Beast thought it was best to put him in a coma until the healing of Death Seed energy is complete. Number 4, Jubilee. Making her first appearance in Uncanny X-Men issue 244, Jubilee, aka Jubilation Lee, first discovered her mutant powers of generating this blinding and explosive blast from her hands. She was discovered by Dazzler, Cyclops, Rogue, and Storm during a rescue at the mall. And when she followed the women through the portal, she ended up at the X-Men's temporary base in the Australian outback. So she stayed there hiding, and then when the Reavers captured Wolverine and took over their base, she borrowed the X-Men's clothes and made a suit for herself. So she went and rescued Wolverine and aided him back to health. She's already an X-Men, look at that, just like that. So Jubilee and Wolverine ended up becoming a good pair, working missions together, and then a vampire ended up infecting the area of Union Square and Curse of the Mutants, and Jubilee, being caught in the path of this infection, ended up becoming a vampire herself. And in perfect harmony, she in the story ends up infecting Wolverine during her bloodthirsty time. And he was coming back to rescue her as well when it all happened. She's kept in a holding cell where Wolverine is really the only X-Men saying that they should keep her alive. So rough times, rough times. Number 3, Tattoo. AKA Christine Korn, she made her first comic book debut in New X-Men issue 126. She's a student of the Xavier Institute, and she's known as Tattoo, well, because her mutation allows her to display messages or designs on her skin. And if that's not cool enough, she can phase through matter. So, coolest mutant ever, okay? She is also one of the Omega Gang members, and one time, her and the other members, led by Quentin Quire, started a riot at Xavier Institute during opening day celebrations. So Tattoo actually phased her hand into Cyclops' head, and then told him that if she became solid, he wouldn't survive to see the end of it. But then, Emma Frost reverted the trick by turning into Diamond, and then putting her hand into Tattoo's head to prevent her from taking out Cyclops. What a confusing sight to see. Superheroes are so cool. And at one point, she also attacked Beast and Wolverine, but she was being controlled by Cassandra Nova. So number 2, Rachel Summers. She's the daughter of Scott Summers and Jean Grey in an alternate universe on Earth 811, and she makes her first appearance in X-Men 141, the Days of Future Past story. So she was born from the Phoenix Force merging with Jean, so she got the abilities of a telepath and of a telekinetic. She was raised at Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters when she met Franklin Richards and became really close. Now one day the school was attacked by federal troops, and she was one of the only survivors. She was taken in by the crazy Ahab, where she was brainwashed and became the mutant Hound, where she used her psionic powers to hunt down other mutants. Her time as this horrible mutant hunter weighed heavy on her conscience afterwards. I mean, she even got her face marked up by these guys. It was just an all bad situation. And finally, number 1, PYRO. PYRO was once a student at the Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters, and in X2, we see him hanging out with Iceman and Rogue. By the end of the movie, he switches over to Magneto's side, facing off against Bobby. And in the comics, Simon Lasker makes his first appearance as PYRO in X-Men Gold, Volume 2, Issue 1, when Mesmero tricks him into believing he's Charles Xavier, and he joins the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. So not good on screen, not good in the comic books. Still a cool character, just likes to dip into the dark side.
Number 10, Deadly Genesis. We can talk about different X-Men and mutant teams here, but I'd also like to touch on some of the rosters as well that you may have forgotten about. This one might be due to selective memory loss, or it could just be because you haven't read the story yet. We are talking here about the X-Men Deadly Genesis limited series, which revealed the next team sent into Krakoa after the X-Men team we know went missing. This team wasn't necessarily a bad one at all. In fact, all of these mutants are kind of super powerful, but they were all basically introduced in this short series, which didn't really help to make us care as much about them as we could have. All in all, this story just had a very early 2000s feel to it. Not that that's a bad thing. The Deadly Genesis X-Men team were a group of kids that Moira McTaggart was trying to help out. She didn't even really see them as students, and then Charles recruited them and turned them into X-Men. The team consisted of Sway, Petra, Vulcan, and Darwin, who have all recently reappeared in the Dawn of X flying, in case you were wondering where they made their first appearance. Number 9. XAVIERS Security Enforcers. One that we might forget about every now and then is the mutant team that Bishop originally belonged to from the alternate dystopian future that he hails from. I believe this Earth is 1191, but I could be mistaken on that. Didn't even write down my Earth number. Bothers me. This mutant team is known as the XSE, which stands for XAVIERS Security Enforcers. If you know Bishop well and you're a big fan, you likely know this team well, but for those who are new to the character, you might not know about this group of enforcers. The point of the team that Bishop was part of was to preserve the long-dead Professor Charles Xavier's dream, where mutants and humans could exist in harmony, living peacefully together. Bishop has even been known to wield specific future equipment, which he got from XSE, although we haven't seen them in a while. All members of the team wear their mutant tattoo brands like a badge of honor, and the members have included Randall, Malcolm, and Bishop's sister Shard, among others over the years. Before we hop into our number 8 spot, I just want to thank all of you for being here and give you a quick reminder to click that like if you are enjoying this video. It really does help us out. Number 8. Nasty Boys. You might remember the original villainous Marauders team, but do you remember Mr. Sinister's Nasty Boys? Don't worry if you have, because I will never let you forget. While both the Marauders and Nasty Boys teams are villainous teams, I couldn't have an obscure mutant team list and not seize the opportunity to remind you all of the Nasty Boys. So here we are. I also just love this name for the team. I personally always read Mr. Sinister with like the most outlandish, flamboyant, yet manipulative pseudo-English accent. So for me, it's very fitting that he decided to name his team this. Nasty Boys, so perfect. It fits perfectly with the voice that I have for him in my mind. The Nasty Boys were the team that came after the Marauders. Instead of Gambit being involved in the team, Multiple Man was the generally heroic mutant who got involved. Originally, the team saw Ruckus as leader, with Slab, Gorgeous George, Ramrod, and Hairbag making up the roster. Gorgeous George even resurfaced in Dawn of X more recently. Yay! I might be the only one, but I'm still kinda hoping that the Nasty Boys as well will make a return. Bring them back. Bring them back. Number 7. OUTBACK. When it comes to X-Men rosters as teams, one of the best but shortest running roster is the OUTBACK team. This era for the X-Men team lasted less than 25 issues, but was still so good that people still talk about it today. Now if you missed this one and you've never heard of it, it's one that you actually probably should read. Not one of my silly points, more one of my serious and beloved forgotten teams on this list. The team started off in issue 229 of Uncanny X-Men, with Storm, Wolverine, Rogue, Colossus, Dazzler, Longshot, Havoc, and Psylocke on it. We'd also see Jubilee introduced during this roster's time together. The OUTBACK team is noted as being one of the best rosters for the X-Men when it comes to having a group who truly feel like outsiders. Also, you get to enjoy the Inferno story in this run, which is bizarre and magical, so you're welcome for that. Number 6. X-Corps. No, I'm not talking about the X Corporation, which has yet to come out, but is still coming our way. Thank goodness. I thought that book was going to be firmly cancelled, but fortunately it has been revived. I'm so ready for X Corporation, let's go. When we talk about X-Corps, we are talking about Banshee's team. He formed this team after Generation X disbanded, and most of the team were composed of that era of mutants. This team was made up of former villains turned heroes and was created to act as a police force basically for the mutant community. Joining Banshee were the Blob, Avalanche, Fever Pitch, Jubilee, Husk, and M, aka Monet. The X-Men team actually did not approve of this team's creation and actually attempted to get Banshee to disband it. In the end, Mystique infiltrated the team and liberated its members, especially the villains, who were being manipulated into behaving heroically by Mastermind under Banshee's orders. Number 5. X-TREME X-Men. This X-Men roster marked the return of Chris Claremont to the X-Men in a full-time capacity. X-TREME X-Men Volume 1 is a series that started in 2001 and ran till 2004. It was a team that featured my girl Rogue as the leader, woohoo, which you know I'm all about. The original X-TREME X-Men roster also featured Beast, Psylocke, Bishop, Storm, Sage, and Thunderbird on the team. Lifeguard, Gambit, and Slipstream were also added to the mix throughout. This team was originally brought together to find Destiny's premonition-filled diaries, but of course along the way was distracted by many other imminent threats. as you do when you're on an X team. Number 4, Generation Hope. This one is from the 2010 series Generation Hope and was under Cyclops' banner ultimately following the events of Regenesis. Though the team itself was led by mutant messiah Hope Summers, and its roster consisted of No Girl, Pixie, Primal, Sebastian Shaw, Transonic, Velocidad, and Zero at that time. Though originally Hope's team started pre-Regenesis as just being 5 mutants including Hope herself, with Velocidad, Oya, Primal, and Transonic on the team. The team was a search and rescue group who were brought together as they were acknowledged as being 4 of the 5 lights on Cerebra. Hope basically triggered the rebirth of the mutant gene, activating these mutants. The 5th light was what they sought and kind of why they came together, heading to Tokyo, Japan. Zero was the mutant they sought, who would eventually join the team, although originally would be antagonist. Number 3, X-People. You probably forgot about this team just because their name is, well, super forgettable, but they are actually from a very memorable alternate universe, the MC2, or also known as Alternate Earth 982. This Earth is the home of the beloved Mayday Parker, aka Spider-Girl, now known as Spider-Woman. But you know what's not so memorable from that universe? Their version of the X-Men. I mean, I get that X-People is meant to be gender neutral, more inclusive, but is that really the best name they could come up with? There has to be something that isn't X-Men that is better than that. I mean, I know there is because we have dozens of other X teams with the letter X in them that are way more catchy than X-People. Because of the Earth it is set in, X-People is a team of originally younger mutants who are now older and taking on the role of leaders, mentors, and teachers. Actually, here Jubilee is the team leader, with her core team roster including Simeon, Angry Eagle, Torque, and Spanner. Number 2, Factor 3. Factor 3? That sounds like some kind of toothpaste. This is another villainous team composed of mutants but led by an alien known as Mutant Master. You might not remember it because it was only around for a few issues and also first appeared way early on in X-Men issue 28 back in 1967. This team popped up a few times and would often force mutants into doing their bidding, often mind-controlling Banshee to attempt to kidnap or help kidnap Professor X. What a wacky time it was. Fortunately, in issue 39, Factor 3 was defeated for good and hasn't bothered the X-Men since. So we haven't seen them for a really long time. Number 1, Lightning Force. This X-Men team comes to us admittedly from an alternate reality, which might be why you've never heard of it before. But once you learn about them, you'll likely wish they had remained forgotten. Lightning Force is an X-Men team that we come across in the Exiles, who themselves belong to Earth 597. They are basically the alternate Excalibur team from their reality, a reality where the Axis won World War II. I think you know where we're going with this. Their roster is almost as surprising as the whole idea for this team. We have Xavier, who helped to create the team through experimenting on them. Yikes. And leading the team we have Hauptmann England, aka Captain Britain, with Magon, aka Gloriana, Shadowcat, and Nightcrawler. Also, if you were wondering, yes, Kitty Pryde is still Jewish in this reality, which yeah, makes her character's history here pretty dark.
Number 10, Bloodstorm. Now Storm is already mistress of the elements, so quite powerful and quite interesting. But what happens when she becomes a vampire? Now this has happened briefly in main continuity, but in the Mutant X universe, it became a permanent change. The Mutant X comic series was published from 1998 to 2001, and as mentioned, it saw a very different Storm. This was after she was bitten by Dracula. Here, she was not saved, but instead became a full-fledged creature of the night. She of course had vows not to kill, so she had the vampire dilemma, which she solved by hiring some of her former teammates to let her drink from them, like Kitty Pryde. She would eventually leave the X-Men and join a team called the Six. She also turns Gambit into a vampire, even though she warns him he'll regret it, and he does. Spoilers. Listen when people warn you. Bloodstorm became a breakout character of this series. Number 9, New Sun Gambit. Speaking of Gambit, let's take a look at one of his alternate versions. This is New Sun Gambit, and he hails from Earth 9921. Gambit actually has enormous power potential that was quashed by Mr. Sinister in the main continuity, but that continuity is not all. In this other universe, he was trained to use his abilities even before he had them, and then when this was combined with his full potential and a mystic ceremony, ceremony, he became something else altogether. The only thing is, the awakening of all these abilities would create a shockwave that would destroy his Earth, forcing him to travel around, and of course he ended up on the 616 Earth, where he ended up befriending Gambit and trying to help him along his way, but didn't tell him who he was. It was after his reveal and Gambit's subsequent disgust that he changed his name to New Sun. Some fans like seeing the full unleashed potential on display of Gambit. Number 8, Basilisk. Not all alternate versions that people like have happy outcomes. Case in point, Basilisk from Earth 11326, an Earth also known as Age of X. Here, Cyclops was incarcerated in a mutants-only facility after the manifestation of his powers as a teenager killed several people, including his parents. He captured the attention of the prison warden Arcade because of his power set, so he made him this very special mask. It looks a lot like the skull mask from Persona 5, and it's something that people like about this character. In fact, for many, it's what makes him cooler. It is a very menacing looking mask. Now, a lot of this universe had to do with Legion, one of its personalities, and manifesting another world. So for some, it was just a cool concept in general. The mask looked great. Loved the mask. Number 7, Soldier Supreme. Here we have an amalgamated character from Warp World. This was the universe that was created when Gamora had the Infinity Gauntlet, put everybody's souls into the Soul Gem, and then folded that universe in half. As a result of this, the characters were merged and fused together. So you have Marvel characters smushed, and one of those was Captain America, Steve Rogers, and Doctor Strange, Stephen Strange. So I mean, they kind of already had the same name, just spelled differently, so it made it a bit easier. Back there, Dr. Stephen Rogers, but now with a PH. Their stories actually don't fuse too badly. It's World War II, and Stephen Rogers is contracted for a super secret soldier experiment, only it turns out it's a cover for a mystical ceremony instead of for, you know, the scientific one that he actually undergoes. But these mystic rituals still end up enhancing his strength and allowing him to connect with the occult, and he becomes Soldier Supreme. So he has Cap's cowl, but he still has like a mustache. And he was actually one of the heroes who objected to Warp World being completely destroyed at the end of the arc by Adam Warlock. So Warlock found a way to let it still exist and let these characters still exist. It was one of those loopholes. Stephen Rogers did that and kept being a hero. Number 6, Old Man Logan. Would any of our nerd lists be complete without mentioning Old Man Logan? Yes they would, but it just keeps coming up. It's a staple here on Top 10 Nerd. Well, this story is one of the most popular alternate universe stories out there, and it has a famously gross confrontation between the Hulk and Wolverine, or Logan, because he's not Wolverine anymore in this story. Here we have a grizzled old man Logan fighting his way across a supervillain-controlled America, trying to keep his claws sheathed after what he did, which, spoilers, was somehow managing to kill most of the X-Men. This was because he fell for an illusion created by Mysterio. This is a must-read for many fans and a fave Wolverine story for others. Number 5, X-Apes. The X-Men are monkeys, or rather apes. This, funnily enough, spawned off of the Marvel Zombies universe and event. Basically, they're trying anything. That event was just so popular. This did not turn out to be quite the hit that was, but I mean, few things can. But this universe still has its fans. Actually, everybody in this universe are apes or monkeys or animals of some kind. So really, if you enjoy this concept, it's just the whole universe, and you have people like the Ape Avengers and Dr. Octopus. It's made for a certain type of pun-loving individual. It's a bit niche, but for some it sparks joy. Number 4, Witch Breed. For this we have to go for Neil Gaiman of Sandman fame's 1602 Marvel Comics contribution. It is also an alternate universe story. In this universe, the Marvel universe is all happening by Elizabethan times, 1602. There, mutants exist, but they are known as Witch Breed. This is because they are thought to be the spawn of demons or witches. Or both. They are creatures to be hunted down, but they find safe haven in Xavier's select college for sons of gentlefolk, a school that causes great concern for Sir Nicholas Fury because he sees the potential of all of these students as soldiers, which, let's not lie, that's part of what Xavier is doing. Again, this is a universe where people tend to like the whole thing, but the X-Men stand out as a distinct part, or rather, the Witch Breed. Number 3, X-Babies. Versions of your favorite characters as babies or kids. This is a concept that is either really fun or incredibly lame, depending upon who you're talking to. So the X-Babies are clones created by Mojo in the Mojoverse. This was probably inspired by an even earlier story where he had just taken the X-Men and turned them into kids, again for entertainment. Because you know, if anything goes on long enough, be it show, series, whatever, you're gonna get two things. You're gonna get a child episode and you're gonna get a musical episode. Now the X babies are a concept that is short-lived, but they are usually returned to. There is even an A babies versus X babies. Again, how cool you'll find these tots depends upon your tolerance for baby-related shenanigans. Number 2, Earth X. The version of the X-Men here are depressing, but all of Earth X is depressing actually. After an experiment of Reed Richards goes wrong, or seemingly that's what happened, for once it's not Reed's fault, I know, shock and awe, a population of superpowered beings is produced all over the Earth, and the world drastically alters. To quote The Incredibles, when everyone's super, no one is. Suddenly there's not as much of a reason to hate and fear the X-Men, and they've largely fallen apart. The one character people tend to remember the most that sticks out when they first think of this is Wolverine, who's got a beer gut and is married to Jean Grey, except it's not Jean, it's Madeline Pryor, but he keeps calling her Jean, and it's just sad. Now how exactly is this cooler, you may be asking? Well, it's all in the depiction. It's unique, it's memorable, and part of a well-received work. So for many, that's what makes it cool. And finally, in at number 1, Vampire Wolverine. Wolverine, Lord of the Vampires. If you thought people loved Vampire Storm, then you know that they enjoy Vampire Wolverine. Wolverine has been a vampire more than once. You have what-if stories like the aforementioned Wolverine, Lord of the Vampires. But you also have arcs like Curse of the Mutants, which would also be the arc that left Jubilee as a vampire for a bit. Many have fond memories of the what-if story, where upon successfully turning Storm, Dracula then turns all the rest of the X-Men. Only because of Wolverine's healing factor, he figures out how to use his powers way faster than everybody else, and so he dethrones Dracula and takes over as leader of the vampires. In fact, he leads the new vampire X-Men to take over New York. It's up to the bizarre combination of Doctor Strange and the Punisher to take him down.